When shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won, that will be ere the set of sun. Where the place? Upon the heath, there to meet with Macbeth. If you weren't already aware, that was the famous introduction to my personal favourite Shakespeare play, Macbeth. And that ties into today's video because we are going to be discussing a retelling of the classic Shakespeare play, The Queen is Dead by C.H. Follen, which is a retelling of the classic play of Macbeth, this time from Lady MacBeth's perspective. This is an ARC review, so there will be no spoilers, and I won't be diving too much into the plot and the story because this book only comes out, what day is it today? It comes out tomorrow. I'm very late in posting this. This should have been up last weekend. But I was in a Fallout settlement building rabbit hole, so I'm not even going to apologise. So I was sent this ARC, and I have to say that I am not sponsored, I am not paid, and I do this. This is a 100% honest review of this book. And as I said before, this will be a spoiler-free zone. What I will talk about in the book happens around the first couple of chapters, and the good stuff that happens from those chapters on, I might touch on lightly, but there's going to be nothing, practically nothing here. You're going to have to read it. So we begin this tale with the viewpoint of Gruach. She is a naive and dreamy girl in her father's castle, and she is being prepared to attend a welcome home hero feast for soldiers that have been battling, if I remember rightly, the Northmen, which is Vikings. And this feast is significant in a lot of ways. This is where we are introduced to most of the characters. We're introduced to her father, and this feast is where both she and we meet a man by the name of Gilead. And he is the honoured guest of her father's. He is a battle-hardened war hero to all intents and purposes. And he has a quiet, calm demeanour. He's good-looking. He's a bit withdrawn, but we can tell straight away that he has an interest in Gruach. He's taken enough with her to ask her father for her hand in marriage, which after a couple of conversations, she eventually accepts. And she is excited for finally being free to make her own life. Now also at this feast, we are introduced to a man who is charismatic, he's good looking, he has eyes you could drown in, and he is a bit of a mischievous rogue. And there is an instant, palpable attraction, tension, between Gruach and this man at the first time of their meeting. And it just comes off the page, you just want to be there. And this man's name is MacBethad. And at the mention of that name, you may think that you already know this story. You've heard of Macbeth, you've seen it in the plays, you've seen it in movies, you've seen, I think there was animations. Everybody knows it, it's universal. And you may think, why bother reading this one when I already know the rest? Now, let me tell you why. You know Shakespeare's interpretation of actual historical events. This is another one from an unknown perspective, one that doesn't get the spotlight as often as it should. And this is more closer to the actual events than Shakespeare's Scottish play. In the play Macbeth, Gruach gets practically no voice. What we know of the character is she's mad, she entices him to murder, and she's calculating. And that's more or less all we get. Gruach gets next to no voice, she doesn't even get her own name. But in this, not only does Follen give her back her name and her voice, she makes her into a character that comes alive, with all her flaws, the sacrifices that she has to make, and the tragedies that she has to wade through in order to survive. So we follow Gruach's life all the way from when she was 15 at that feast, through all the emotional upheavals that go on through her life, and everything she has to face against a growing, tumultuous political background, and the many enemies that come into play and she comes into contact with. Some of these enemies you'll probably know off the top of your head. Macduff comes into it, but he wasn't as big as I thought he was going to be. And one of the enemies, Mael, were introduced very early on, deserves a special mention for being just an evil piece of shit. He was written so well that whenever a scene finished with him anywhere in the vicinity, I felt like I needed to clean myself, because just, he's smarmy, he's oily, he's a piece of shit. And that is testament to how well a bad character is written, that it makes you feel like you equally want to wring his neck and see him die in a slow, horrible way, and also just remove yourself from him completely and just no. Ugh. I do think the book could have been longer to dive more into the political manoeuvrings and the things going on around the periphery of the story. At certain times during it, I think that a viewpoint of a different character, so we get the first-hand view of those events transpiring that are going to affect our main character, I think that would have been... it would have added more weight to what actions different characters take further on in the story. Again, as I said at the beginning, I can't go too much into it because I don't want to spoil it, but some of the big events, some of the battles, you only get to hear about through a messenger in relay to our main character Gruach, because of course she's not at the battles. But I would have liked to have, even if it was just like a little sort of snippet of how the exterior characters were feeling and what they felt about what actions they were going to take, and how that ties into the general running of this character's life. As you might have guessed already, I really liked this arc. I thought the characters were compelling. I just wanted more meat. I mean, look behind me. I like authors that have diarrhea of the word processor. I like a lot of chunk in my book. I like how the author ties in the stuff that we know happens in Macbeth, so that we're waiting for those characters to appear. We're waiting for those events to come up, because we know they're coming because of the play. But it's done differently. It's twisted, which is great, because then as a reader you feel that you don't know what's coming, and that's the perfect place to be for reading something for the first time. One thing I thought that was quite quirky about this book is at the end there is a pronunciation guide of the names, because I'm assuming they're in Gaelic and not in the anglicised version of their names. They're still in their original Scottish. And I like having that pronunciation guide. It's like having a fantasy story with a map at the front, so you can tell where everybody's going. I thought that was quite a really good addition. So for me, this book gets 5 stars. As I said, I really, really loved it, and I can't wait to revisit it again. So if this is something that you would think that you would be interested in, I will leave a link to the book down below when it comes out, which is tomorrow, because I am so late doing this. And if you like this video, give me a like, comment and subscribe, and as always, keep reading.